All right, we're back to the mess of the wiring. What we've done is we have mounted two fuse panels back here with some little isolated positive studs. Carpet's probably going to go over top of this, maybe with some wood or something, just so it can't get bashed in when you lean on it. Little stopper so it hits the metal first. But yeah, we've got our two circuits. One's going to be switch 12 volts, one's going to be constant 12 volts. So constant 12 volts is going to be like your hazard, your brake light, your headlight, high and low. And then your switch 12 volts, that's going to be your indicators, washer motor, wiper motor, blower motor, and I'm probably forgetting power windows. Power windows might actually be on the constant 12 volt, just because if I ever lock my keys in, it's nice being able to push the button. And yeah, that's the only reason why. But yeah, we mounted it here because I don't have the dash in this car, and honestly, I don't really want to install the dash and then uninstall it. I kind of just want to do that all in one go. So the wiring is going to be very basic and labeled on the dash harness when I pull it out of the Firebird, and the other end of this is going to be labeled, so I know it's just a very quick splicing of wires or putting connectors in, so I can ease that up without too much getting in the way. But yeah, so we have that there. We're gonna run this 10 gauge from either one to there. That's 12 gauge wiring. It's two circuits that are, or I'll show you what I did. It's just a bunch of spade connectors, just bent over and crimped onto the bare wire. It's not the best way because it's all going to be pulling from the same spot. So, I mean, I do have to be kind of wary on how much I'm going to run. So I'm not going to run a bunch of circuits that are high load just on one and then low load on this one, because we can only run as much as we would run on one 10 gauge wire. I mean, that's the downside of it, but for 10 gauge wires, it's quite a bit of power going through. Yeah, and I mean the blower motor is probably going to be on its own inline fuse off of another one of those isolated studs. We're going to mount two probably just in there so I can have little shorter sections of wiring. And when I run the ECU, I can have two dedicated straight from the battery, switch 12 volts, constant 12 volts. So that makes it easier for the ECU, because the ECU will most likely sit in that corner because that's where it sat in the Capri, and that's where the harness was kind of built to. And I don't really see myself redoing the harness for any reason because it worked, and it worked fine. So keep it going. And then for some other stuff like the radio, I will probably just run a wire over. It only needs a switch 12 volt, or I could run just an inline fuse and not care. Either way, we'll figure that. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, we have indicators. We've got this is how we're going to run the hazard. Now, I don't know if this makes sense, but it kind of makes sense to me, is that the two wires, before they go into the little flasher units, we're going to put those on like a dual isolated circuit switch. So we push that in. It'll give 12 volt to both sides of these, and then that will carry it through to both indicators. But then when I'm just kind of driving around using indicators, that circuit's open, so it can't jump over the other one, as long as it's a decent switch. And then we have this guy, which is just for our lights on our dash to go left or right. But yeah, that's where we're at. It's all going to get cleaned up once we get screws to mount the relays up top, because we have high and low beam on relays, so it's not running it through the switch or the stock, because it's a long constant draw on the stock, and eventually it'll burn out the stock, or it'll be such a high resistance value that the headlights are dim. Our friend Brendan really put us, actually another member of our Ford's put it on to us, and it actually does increase the brightness of headlights on a lot of cars. But yeah, and then we have the horn, which is just a switched triggered neutral or negative, sorry, for the horn. But yeah, I'm getting hungry. Wiring takes it out of me mentally for this much of fucking around. But yeah, got any comments, suggestions, ideas, concerns? I mean, put them down below and I'll read them and see if I value the concern at the same level, which probably will. But yeah, smell you later.